Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan with the Motor City Madmouth, and we have a four-man crew tonight, including myself, the running back, Mel Farr Jr. Welcome back.
Hello, guys.
Greg Fuchs, South Florida Tribune sports writer.
Evening, everybody.
And last but not least, Steve, Mr. Balestrieri, Mr. Veteran, and the veteran of a lot of trades. Welcome back, Mike.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad to be here. Hope I can help the ball club.
Oh, you'll be fine. I got a great crew, as I always do. I don't recruit losers. I only bring on winners. And each and every one of you guys are winners. Just avoid my recklessness and don't get concussions, because I've had 2 in 6 weeks. Not that I really need to brag about it, so I won't. But with that said, we're going to lead this broadcast off with Greg Fuchs. I want everybody out there to know about your Miami Dolphins story. Obviously, the Dolphins did a good job clamping down on Lamar Jackson and the rest of that Baltimore Ravens team. Go ahead, Greg, take it away.
Yeah, as I started off my article, I said, who the heck saw this coming? I mean, it was bad enough that the Dolphins had trouble winning any games this year, but they have just been terrible in those games. They've shown no hope, no sense of optimism. And then they go out Thursday night against one of the better teams in the league, one of the better offensive lines, one of the best quarterbacks. And the defense was outstanding. I mean, the Dolphins had the 6th best defense in the league last year, and it looked like it last Thursday night against Baltimore. And the change, and I wrote about this over a month ago. Last year, the Dolphins consistently put the 5, 6, 7, 8 guys in the line of scrimmage, and it was effective. First half of this season, they didn't do it. I think they converted, I want to say the second half of the Jacksonville game, they started doing it. And they did it against Houston, but that was Houston. I mean, doing it against the Ravens with that offensive line and a guy like Lamar Jackson, who can take a defense who's doing everything right and then make look bad. He'll take off and run for like 30, 40 yards. But they can just blitzed him all night long. Baltimore had no answers for it whatsoever in terms of how to block it or to do short passes or to run against it. And even Lamar Jackson was held to 39 yards rushing. So from a defensive standpoint, it was an A-plus game. I mean, there's nothing they did wrong. And then you had that great strip and fumble return by Xavier Howard, which clearly shows he is still far and away the best player on the Miami Dolphins. And I know he's been mentioned in a few trade rumors over the last year or two. I'm not sure why you'd ever trade him. He is that good. Now, despite that outstanding win, they're still the other side of the football. And their offense still struggled big time. They got 1 touchdown, got into the red zone 3 other times, but had to settle for short Jason Sanders field goals each time. One positive, they had their first 2 plays of the season over 50 yards. Last team in the NFL to accomplish that. And they actually had like a 64 and a 52-yard passes. And they had 3 other passes over 20 yards, something that has solely been lacking from the offense all season. And it still sort of boggles my mind. How can you have 5 plays that big and you only score 1 touchdown? So the offense still has a lot of improvement, especially when it comes to running the ball. They just flat out cannot run the football. They're playing the Jets on Sunday, which usually solves a lot of offensive problems. But I'm not optimistic they'll even be able to run the ball against the Jets, but should be able to throw it a bit. So it was a great win. It was the best I have felt about watching a Dolphin game in a long time. There's a genuine sense of euphoria watching that game. And I'm going to enjoy the full 10 days until this Sunday rolls around. And let's see what happens this Sunday.
All right, Steve. Yeah. What's your take on that?
You know, it was funny because I figured I was going to only watch the first quarter. The game would be over by then, as Greg pointed out, and it would be a blowout for the Ravens. And then as I'm watching the game, I was like, what got into these Dolphins? We haven't seen this, all season long. I was really surprised at how well that defense played. And as he pointed out in his article, you know, that's how they played defensively a year ago. They were really good defensively a year ago. They were taking the ball away. And we really haven't seen that all season long. That was just a A-plus performance. And I don't, I know some people were writing the day after the game that or the Ravens didn't, take the game serious. And I don't think that's given the Dolphins enough credit. I thought they really, they balled out all game long defensively. And as he said, they had some big plays on offense. They couldn't get that ball into the end zone. They kept stalling there, and that's something that they need to work on. And that's where your running game comes in, because if you can run the football in the red zone, as we all know, then it opens up play action and it allows your quarterback to find somebody down there. But when you can't run, it makes things really difficult when, the field gets tighter. But overall, let me tell you what, I thought Brian Flores and his whole staff deserve A's for that game. That is a really tough Baltimore Ravens, football team. We know how good they can be when they're on top of their game. And I thought the Dolphins took everything away, everything they were trying to do offensively. I thought they did a great job of that.
All right, Mel.
Yes, that's why they play the games, because any given Sunday, anything can happen. Those guys in those other uniforms, the white and teal uniforms, every other Monday, they're getting a check, they're getting paid, they're professionals. And it was obvious that Baltimore either took them lightly, just wasn't prepared to face that team that week mentally. You're kind of waiting around because, you looked at the Indianapolis game, they came from behind. You're kind of waiting around for Baltimore to do something, but Miami kept getting in the way. Those guys were playing with a lot of passion, and they deserved to win the football game. Baltimore, obviously, they're going to have to regroup, get back to work. Sometimes you forget how hard it is to win games in the NFL, and you have to prepare like crazy in order to win games in the NFL. Not only physically, but mentally. Football is a lot more mental than it is physical. You got to be in the right mind space to go out there and compete week in and week out. Not just week in and week out on Sundays, but daily. You got to be willing to compete daily. And I had the pleasure of watching some guys do this at a high level. Jackie Slater and Kevin Green, got to watch those guys compete daily in practice. And, that's why they're Hall of Famers, because of the way that they competed in practice. It was good on good, the best on the best. And one Hall of Famer against another Hall of Famer, and iron sharpens iron. And that's how come they had one of the reasons why they had the success that they ultimately had. So, every week is a different week. Somehow or another, I ended up watching that entire game. You just kind of waited, for something to happen, and it just never happened. The Dolphins got in the way. Obviously, they won the turnover margin as well. So anytime you can do that and you're struggling as a team, that's good. But there's still, offensively, there's still a lot of questions. Jacoby Brissett got hurt. I think he had a lower leg injury. Tua comes in there. Offense is, they're not running the football very well. I think they have a lot of questions on the offensive side of the ball. Less questions on the other side of the ball, but plenty of questions that they need to address or need to get some answers for on the offensive side of the ball.
So let me ask you guys a quick question, and I mean quick. Well, do you feel that the road team is at a disadvantage when they have to travel for these Thursday night games? PSC?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because, it's a short week to begin with. The guys are beat up after Sunday, and, you have to squeeze a couple of days of practice in, and then you have the travel on top of it.
Okay.
I think the home team has a big advantage in these games.
Okay.
And that's why, a lot of people were pointing, well, tonight we have two teams going in opposite directions. The Patriots have outscored their last four opponents by 100 points combined. Right. And you have Atlanta that's being outscored by a lot and not playing very well. They lost by 40 against Cowboys last week. You can throw a lot of that stuff out on Thursday night games. Okay. Because, and as we've seen all year long, the parity in the NFL, if you don't bring your A game every week this year, it doesn't matter who you are or who you're playing, you can lose. We saw Tennessee lose to the Jets. Mm-hmm. We saw the Rams lose. Baltimore lost to the Miami Dolphins. It's been every week. So, tonight's game, I think, is going to be close.
All right, Mel, what are your thoughts about the visiting team?
Yeah, I think you're always at a disadvantage when you have to travel, because then you have one less day of preparation. And then you have to, even though they're in the same time zone, you still in another, sleeping in another bed, in a foreign bed, again, that travel on the plane, couple hours, trying to get your legs back and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, definitely on a short week in particular, after you had a pretty, and Baltimore's a physical team, and that's the way they want to play. So I mean, yeah, it's definitely to the traveling team disadvantage when they have that short turnaround.
Greg, you want to add to that?
Can't add much to it. I agree with them in theory. I agree with what both of them said, but they're still professionals. Playing on the road on a Thursday night. I don't know if that's enough of an excuse not to bring at least your B+ game to the field. And
Okay.
it'll be interesting tonight because, I mean, if this game tonight was in New England, I think everyone would expect the Patriots to win by a couple touchdowns. In Atlanta, I think it's going to be close. I think. But if the Patriots beat it by 20, I still wouldn't be surprised. So I just don't trust Matt Ryan.
Well, we'll get to that game shortly. I just want to make sure that we understand the point of whether it is problematic for a visiting team on a short week, but we will address that shortly. And one other question I want to ask each of you guys, and I'll inject an opinion or so. Do you think that this Dolphins win against Baltimore takes a little bit of pressure off of Brian Flores? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. It takes the pressure off for 1 week.
Okay.
I agree.
You lose to the Jets this week, and they have very winnable games coming up. They have 2 against the Jets, 1 against the Giants, and 1 against Carolina. All right. They got to win at least 2 of those. They could win all 4 of them. So there's still pressure on Flores, especially since the offensive side of the ball is struggling so much.
Steve.
Yeah, I agree. The heat's off this week. Now, if they win 3 out of the next 4 or even sweep the next 4 games, which, is possible. I mean, like, Greg said, they have 2 against the Jets, the Giants. Carolina will be tougher now because I think Cam has injected some life back into that team. But I mean, if for some reason, Flores wins 4 straight, guess what? The heat's off of him at that point. But you have to take it a week at a time. And as big as that win was last week, if they go up and lay an egg against the Jets, then it'll probably be even hotter on them.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about the Miami Dolphins is they definitely have to get much more improved play at the quarterback position. And alluding to the travel situation, the one thing I'll never forget covering football for a long time was when Rod Marinelli during a preseason game had the Lions take a day trip to Oakland during a preseason game, Mr. Military here, and they didn't even have a hotel. It was a commute trip from Detroit to Oakland and then play a football game. Of course, we all know where Rod Marinelli stands, in the head coaching. We won't get into that, but the most insane travel story I've ever heard in my entire life was Rod Marinelli commuting to Oakland to do a preseason game. And yes, folks, the Lions looked flat and they got hammered by the Raiders. That's all I've got to say about that. So since
one more thing on the Dolphins, in terms of pressure, I think there's much more pressure on the general manager, Chris Greer, because sitting here today, and it may be different a year from now, he's whiffed on some high draft picks the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay, well, that's fair. Since we're talking about the Ravens real quick, Mel brought this up before we went on. Let's talk about Le'Veon Bell, who got cut. Here's a guy that went ahead and sat out a year, left the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I think was a catastrophic career mistake. And he has bounced around the league big time. So, Mel, since you brought it up earlier, you talk about Le'Veon Bell. I mean, this guy makes the biggest mistake on the planet leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers, arguably one of the best organizations on the planet.
Yeah. You left money on the table there, sat out that entire year. You can't get that money back. They had offered him, I believe they offered him an extension. I can't remember what the money was like, but it was obviously, I don't know if it was on par with the Jets paid him, but there's a lot of fluff in that what the Jets offered him. But again, you left money on the table. You missed a whole year's worth of salary, and now he's just kind of bounced around. He just got released from Baltimore. he was at Kansas City. He got picked up with Kansas City for a few games. And then, he was sitting around, and then Baltimore had a bunch of injuries, and they gave him a call. He was out of shape. He's overweight. They put him on the practice squad, and, he's not the same Le'Veon Bell that he was 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, this guy was one of the top running backs in the league when he was at Pittsburgh. And it's unfortunate. It's one of those things when you bet on yourself, you got to be willing to deal with the circumstances or the consequences. And, unfortunately, Pittsburgh called his bluff and he lost. Now, Ezekiel Elliott, Jerry Jones is in a different place in his life. I mean, he's really chasing championships. When Ezekiel Elliott did what he did, kind of forced Jerry's hand. Ezekiel had nothing in his hand. I mean, he was bluffing all the way. He was going to come back, but Jerry called his bluff. Excuse me, Jerry didn't call his bluff. Jerry folded, and he pushed all the chips to the middle and gave Ezekiel whatever he wanted. Now, Ezekiel hasn't been the same running back since he got paid. Melvin Gordon a couple years ago, the Chargers, he did play on the franchise tag, but he wanted $15 million a year, I think what it was, and Chargers offered him $10 million a year, and he turned it down. The next year in free agency, I think he signed a 1-year deal or something like that with Denver for $7 million, something like that. So, they're trying to do away with the running back position anyway. Well, paying the running backs, back when I was coming up, the running back was a premier position. Well, that's entirely changed now. Quarterback is the premier position. They're the ones that get paid all the money. Running backs, ever since Shanahan did the things that he did in Denver, people think they can get somebody off the street or get a late round draft pick and turn this guy into a 1,000-yard rusher and a productive NFL player, get 3, 4, 5 years out of him, and then go get somebody else before they have to pay these guys. They don't want to pay running backs anymore. So these guys have to know that, and that has to be in the back of your mind when you're negotiating contracts, that most running backs don't see a second contract. If you really think about it, most of them don't get that. If they see one, they don't see that big second contract. Wide receivers, they see a big second contract. Quarterbacks, huge second contract. Defensive ends, big second contract. Corners, big ones. Everywhere else on the football team, players see big contracts. Running backs generally do not, because of all the wear and tear on them, because they know at some point in time they're going to break down, they're going to fall apart, and you're going to be paying a guy a whole lot of money and getting no production from him.
Yeah, the position's been devalued, so is what it is, not only monetarily but career as well. All right, Greg, what's your take on that?
2 takes on it. One, it's one thing to make a bad decision to leave the Steelers organization. It is a much worse decision to decide to join the New York Jets organization. I mean, when you're a free agent, you get 2 things: hopefully more money, and you get to play for the team. You get to pick the team you want to play for. You know how good they are, You know what their system is. You know who their quarterback is. And why you would go to the Jets is just mind-boggling to me. And to what Mel was talking about, the running back position has been devalued. And I think mostly it's just because of the risk of injury. I mean, how many running backs, elite runners, just get injured? I mean, look at this year. How many games McCaffrey missed? How many games has Barkley missed? I mean, you don't want to be paying those guys, $10, $15, $20 million a year and have them miss half the season. There's just a huge risk factor when it comes to running backs.
All right, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, when it comes to Bell, I mean, I know the Steelers at that point, they were having a lot of internal problems, but he was in a really good position because at that point, Ben Roethlisberger was still, at the top of his game. They had wide receivers. The Steelers have always drafted really good wide receivers, and they had Bell. They were always in the mix. And Mel was mentioning it earlier about his contract. I think the Jets ended up paying him only what the Steelers offered him, and he went from a really good place to a really bad place with the Steelers. I mean, with the Jets. And, it really cost him because he went to a lesser team. He didn't have the supporting cast around him, and he lost a year out of his career, which at that point he was still playing at a very, very high level. And it seemed like he was never the same running back after he left Pittsburgh. I thought it was a big mistake on his part. And he ended up not getting the money anyway, because I'd have to double check that. But I think the Jets only paid him about the same amount of money the Steelers were offering him in the first place. And, when you're looking at it monetarily, you lose a year and you're going to a much poorer football team. I just thought it was a really, really bad decision by him. And it really cost him career-wise, I thought.
Well, all I can say is when I was playing fantasy football in my family league, Candy's family, I happened to have Le'Veon Bell on my fantasy team, so that blew up already. And number two, you don't drink the Jets Kool-Aid because Rex Ryan sold Tim Tebow a bill of goods. And we all know where that went when Tim should have gone to Jacksonville, but he actually had a chance to be quarterback at Jacksonville in his hometown. So when you're drinking the Jets Kool-Aid, then obviously you pay. Rex Ryan, Tim too. I'll tell you, Rex Ryan would be a great used car salesman. I can tell you that right now. But he really would. But and here's the thing: we all know how classy the Steelers organization is, and Najee Harris, the kid out of Alabama, is going to do well. We're not going to get into much of that tonight, but it just goes to show you got Mike Tomlin, who's unquestionably one of the best coaches in the league. You don't want to leave this guy. You really don't. So what a great segue to this one, because now we're going to talk about should football games end in a tie. And do I have to go ahead and mention that the Lions and the Pittsburgh Steelers played to a 16-16 game and a matchup of classic quarterbacks like Mason Rudolph and Jared Goff? My goodness, a dream matchup, and the Lions getting rid of their kickers shortly afterwards. We're not going to get into that game because we don't want to depress everybody. But at least I can say one thing about the Lions. They won't go 0-17. They'll go 0-16-1, although hopefully it doesn't even get to that point. But let's just stay with the topic at hand. Steve, I'll let you lead off with this. Should football games end in a tie?
During the regular season, I have no issue with that. I mean, they give them the overtime. The players are already playing too many games as it is. What happens in a game like that where you're going to end up playing 2 games on Sunday? I mean, no. The overtime rule, I like the way it is. I don't think they should change it. If after overtime nobody, wins the game, let it end in a tie, because it will have effect on somebody's division crown. We've seen it happen before. A tie can either really help or hurt a team. So I like the way it is. I don't want to see it change it. I don't want to see that college rule, where you get it at the 20. I don't really care for that.
All right, Greg.
Yeah, I agree. Regular season, I'm fine with the way it is. Games are long enough, season's long enough. We don't want to risk more injury to the players. Plus, there is very rarely a tie. And if you want to break the tie, let the fans vote on it. If anyone who watched that Steelers-Lions game, both of those teams deserve to get a loss.
Yeah, I've heard that. All right, Mel.
That was a terrible game. Nobody wanted to win. So it was the right outcome was a tie because neither one of the teams wanted to win. And that kicker, that looked like me kicking on my left foot when that guy went out there in overtime to kick that ball. That was just ridiculous. This guy's getting paid, and that's the best that he could do. I couldn't believe that. And then the Steelers and the guy fumbling the ball. You had the wide receiver fumble. Then the tight end catches the ball. They're just trying to get in field goal range, stop the clock, had them run out of bounds so they can stop the clock and trot the field goal kicker out there because I don't think they had any more timeouts left. And he drops the ball. So that was the perfect outcome to that game. It was a lousy game. Neither team wanted to win. Neither team deserved to win. So we got the proper outcome.
Well, interestingly enough, how you talk about it, number one, we have a 17-game schedule. We could still have a team that's 8-8 if it were to happen with 8-1, and the Lions at least won't be 0-17. And yes, I don't know what the unemployment rate is in Detroit, but You added one to it with that kicker that they let go. And ironically, Steve, I think they brought a kicker in off the practice squad from the New England Patriots too.
Yes, they did.
So I don't know how
signed
good this guy is, but I gotta believe he's a little bit better.
Got to be better than that guy. I mean, that was a
Yeah,
line
right.
drive. It barely got up in the air.
Yeah,
That was bad.
it was pretty terrible.
Yeah. All right. Well, I had to bring it up because it's out there. We have to talk about tie games. And you're right, that half a win definitely could make a difference somewhere along the lines. But I don't know. You guys gave me good answers. I'm satisfied with that. We'll go into a few more topics and then let everybody watch the game. Okay. And I'll go to the I told you so category, Mr. Farr. How you sent me a text message about Odell Beckham Jr. being an LA Ram. Yes, Mel Farr, I told you so. He'll be paired with Matt Stafford and Sean McVay. Okay, so now that I told you so, Mel, how will this marriage work out with Odell Beckham and the Rams, Stafford and company?
It's kind of working out like the Lakers. Not very well right now. At least the first game, it didn't work out that great. I mean, they look terrible, the Rams, in Odell's debut. You look at them, obviously Kroenke, he has a lot of money, and obviously he's doing everything in his power. If anybody has pressure on him, Sean McVay has the most pressure on him right now because he's gotten everything that he needs to win, and it's just not gelling right now. And they remind me of the Lakers. I mean, the Lakers, they got all these players, and they just don't seem to fit with one another. They don't go out there and win ball games. They might get a lead, but that lead, will dissipate, and they'll end up losing it, and they'll end up losing the game. So I hadn't seen Odell play. We haven't seen Odell play in a while. Stafford has been a real disappointment. I'll be honest with you. I've never was high on Matthew Stafford, as a lot of people seem to be at Georgia. I mean, being the number one overall pick, I think, they should have won more games at the University of Georgia if he was, if he's all that. Similar to what Trevor Lawrence did. I mean, they won a lot of football games when Trevor Lawrence was at Clemson. They didn't win. I mean, they won a lot of games, but they were never in the national championship hunt. They always lost the game that everybody expected them to win, whether it be like South Carolina or maybe Tennessee or something, Florida, whoever. They'd always lose a game that they shouldn't have lost. And, you look at his record in Detroit, and, they had some talent up there when he was there, since he's been there. I mean, Calvin Johnson, he's a Hall of Famer. Ebron was there, even though he had a little bit of the drops. I think, the offensive coordinator, I mean, they put a lot on him. I mean, they threw the football. They didn't run the football. They threw the football a lot, and they weren't very successful. Maybe he didn't have a great defense around him, but, now he has great defenses, and he's throwing pick sixes. I mean, defense can't do anything about that. When you throw it to the other team and they run it back for a touchdown, there's nothing the defense can do about that. And, throwing up Hail Marys, that pass he threw to Odell Beckham early, his first interception. I mean, you can say him and Odell weren't on the same page, but that had a very low chance of being completed. Throwing the ball with two defenders, and you're throwing, you basically threw up a punt, and it's just, you threw it up for grabs. So I think Matthew Stafford is going to have to kind of do the same thing that Mahomes had to do, is take a look in the mirror, and you got to start taking what the defense gives you, as opposed to trying to force it down the field, as opposed to trying to be the, 1980s Showtime Lakers. Just take what the defense gives you, get those long, sustained drives, run the football, take time off the clock, punch the ball in with touchdowns, and just end up with a W at the end, as opposed to stat chasing. It seems like he's doing more stat chasing than trying to win football games.
Interesting. All right, Steve.
Yeah, it's like the Rams are just, they're in this mad dash to collect talent. And like Mel said, you have to get guys that gel together. And, being spoiled, when I was living in New England, we saw the Patriots go to 9 Super Bowls. They won 6 of them. And we'd hear the same thing every year. this other team is much more talented than New England. This team has got much more talent across the board than the Patriots. But the Patriots gelled together as a team. They had 53 guys pulling in the same direction. They have guys that, were always working in conjunction with each other. They never had these communication breakdowns. The Rams still have plenty of time to get their act together. But, usually when you collect, and we saw it a few years ago with Philadelphia, when they collected that dream team and they just fell apart. And, you have to get guys that fit what you want to do. You can't be just, we're going to collect an all-star at every position, because it usually doesn't work that way. They did look pretty bad last week. I thought it was surprising, but again, we've seen this all season long. Everyone seems to be laying an egg at one point or another this year. But when it comes to collecting talent, you have to get guys that fit what you envision for a system, and not just get it. I like Odell Beckham Jr. I think he'll probably do well there. They have a lot of talent at the position, but they have to figure out what they're going to do with them. And like Mel said, they're trying to make everything into a highlight reel. And, that's team's going to catch on to that pretty quick. So, they need to take what the defense is giving you. They have enough talent where they can win any kind of football game they need to.
All right, Craig.
Yeah, I was surprised he signed there for two reasons. One, the Rams already had Kupp, Woods, and Jefferson. So what do they need another wide receiver for? And from Beckham's perspective, he seems like a guy who starts to complain if he doesn't get enough targets. And how is he going to get enough targets in light of those three other receivers? That was incredibly fortuitous for the Rams. 2 days after he signs, Woods blows out his knee. So now it seems like a fantastic signing for both Beckham and the Rams. Question I have for Mel is, how hard is it to learn a playbook in the middle of the season for a new wide receiver?
Very difficult nowadays, I believe, because the playbooks are a lot more complicated than they were when I was playing. I did some coaching in the spring league, and they had a playbook. I said, I don't know how guys can memorize this stuff here, because everything is concepts versus numbers. So when I played, it was numbers. So, it was 1 through 9, and that represented the routes. Well, now everything is a concept. So, you'll have a trips to one side and maybe a single receiver on the other side, and there will be a concept on this side here. So you have to memorize the concept. So each wide receiver is probably interchangeable, because if you know the concept, then you know what each one of the wide receivers is supposed to do. But for me, coming in, not only, the language is going to be different. It's like, you're speaking Spanish over here, and then now you go over here, and now you're speaking German, but it's the same play. So it's very difficult. But these guys are smart. They can, piece it together. You can put together a few little packages for him so he can learn the full entire playbook. You might be able to give him 20 plays or something like that. Okay, Odell, learn these 20 plays, and if we do some checks or something like that, we're going to make sure that we check to a play that So it has some familiar language, but it's extremely difficult, and it's real difficult. I can tell you, when I was at Denver, I still didn't understand that offense, and when I went to the Rams, that offense was like little league. It was just so simple, and we did great things in that offense with the Rams.
Yeah, the only play.
Mel, is in today's game, the route trees for the wide receivers a lot more complicated than it was back maybe a few years ago?
Is the route tree a little bit more complicated? The route tree is pretty much the route tree. Now there might be some little wrinkles within the route tree, but it's pretty much the same. Everybody understands what the route tree is. They know what a 1 is, they know what a 7 is, they know what a 6 is, they know what a 4 is. Now there may be certain little wrinkles. Some teams may do it a little bit differently, or against some defenses, certain routes will become something else because of the defense that's in front of you. But the route tree is pretty much the route tree. That's the way that I learned it, and it's very simple for me. Now UCLA, we did concepts, so it was entirely different. UCLA was a very, very complicated offense, but once you memorize the concept, then you understood exactly what you're supposed to do. It didn't tell you what you're supposed to do. Like the route tree is going to tell everybody what to do. It's going to tell the single side receiver what route he's going to run, tight end what route you're going to run, and the Z what route you're going to run, fullback, tailback what route you're going to run. Concepts don't do that. You just got to memorize the whole concept and know in this concept, this is what my route is.
All right. The only thing is I'm going to really add to this whole thing there. Number one, Odell Beckham won't have anything to complain about because you can't complain about the quality of quarterback that Matthew Stafford is compared to Baker Mayfield. That's item number one. Number two, okay, the Rams had a bullseye on their chest when they started the year because they have acquired, as you say, Steve, all this talent. So you've already got a bullseye in your chest going in there because of this marquee acquisition. So, Odell Beckham, you can't complain anymore. And here's the interesting stat of the whole thing. That Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, after 10 games, both have 7-3 records. That to me is very interesting. So we'll move on to the next.
After 10 games, where? With the Rams?
Yeah, last year under Goff, Goff was 7-3, and now Stafford's 7-3. So putting it all in perspective, the Rams have a bullseye in their chest. Odell Beckham is a real quarterback to throw to. So, and here we are. So it's some interesting dynamics to throw out there. Two more things I want to address tonight. And obviously, we're back to the I told you so category that Steve Balestrieri predicted that Cam Newton would get another job. Little did we realize that the job he would end up getting would be with the New England Patriots. We'll get to that in a moment. A team,
Carolina Panthers.
That's right. Okay. He got a job with the Carolina Panthers, but he backed up Mac Jones with the New England Patriots. So you talk about the irony there. So with that said, okay, I like what I saw with Cam Newton that first week, his first act. So my question to you is this, and I think it's a great move. So the things that really come to mind that I'm going to address you guys with, okay, number one, okay, this is a three-part question for every one of you, okay? Are Sam Darnold's days numbered in Carolina? Number two, okay, Matt Rule, okay, I don't know if he was ever on a hot seat, but was this move made out of desperation to keep him from getting there? And three, is Cam Newton the long-term answer, or at least the next 2 or 3 years for Carolina? I actually think it was a great move by Carolina to bring back Newton. He's an icon there, so to speak. And why not? I mean, but when you think about the enthusiasm that David Tepper, the owner, has, and you have the coach Matt Rule, and we're glad to bring you back, with all this erratic quarterback play. Because when you think about it, Teddy Bridgewater didn't really work out. We all thought Sam Darnold could be all right, but then we're going back to Cam. So I think it's a great move for the Panthers. But Steve, I've got to go back to the I told you so category. You thought he'd become employed again, and now he's with the Panthers. He is employed again.
Yeah, it shows you can go home again. But to start off with your first question, is Sam's days numbered? They very well could be. I think they'll bring him back next year and let him compete in training camp, but I think they're going to bring in another quarterback. I don't think Cam is the long-term answer there. I mean, his body has taken a beating. He's not the same guy he was when the year they went 15-1 and he won the MVP, but he still showed at times he's still a beast running the football. I mean, he's like 255, and he's big, he's strong. I thought he played really well in limited fashion on Sunday. I think it's a great move in the short term for them, because now all of a sudden, it seemed like the Panthers were just fading quickly. Now all of a sudden there's this energy around the team, which Newton brings. We saw it in New England last year. I was curious how he was going to work out with Bill Belichick with the Patriots, because we know how Belichick is, but Belichick and Newton got along fine. And then to see the reaction of all the other players around him, he still generates a ton of respect. in the locker room, and the players all feed off that. And now all of a sudden, you hear people talking about Carolina is now a threat to make the playoffs. A couple of weeks ago, we wouldn't have said that. So I think he's a really good short-term answer. I still think they're going to look for a quarterback in the spring. And I do think that Darnold's days may very well be numbered, but, they paid a lot for him. So, so I think they'll bring him back and let him compete in the summer. But I don't think they're looking at him anymore as a starter.
Well, I'll tell you this. Okay, number one, Matt Rule appreciates them a whole lot more because he knows that they're trying to win right away. And let's not lose sight of the fact that whether we want to say it or not, Cam Newton will sell tickets and he will put bodies in the stand there. So with that said, Greg, what's your take on Cam?
Good move by Carolina. They were desperate for a quarterback, and he was far and away the best one available out there. Not sure what he has left, but he should be more than serviceable. Will he be he's not the long-term answer, but could he be the starting quarterback next year? Yeah, because Carolina will probably be one of like 10 teams looking to improve their quarterback's position for next season. And there aren't 10 quarterbacks out there. So some teams are going to have to stay with the guy they got. Carolina, Cam might be the best guy they can find for next year. And this is a fantastic opportunity for Newton. You're going to get a clear shot of what he still has left. Can he stay healthy? Yeah, I think everyone knows he probably can still run the ball pretty well, but can he throw the ball accurately, consistently? And if he does, I think he's back in Carolina next year. And if he doesn't, his market will probably be a little limited again. And if he plays real well, there's going to be a lot of teams after him in the offseason.
Well, so you're telling me, Greg, you feel he's a good stopgap option is what you do right now. And
all things considered, great stopgap right now.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, you know what? He can't earn another contract anyway. So, and I agree with you guys. I think they're going to add another quarterback in the spring. So, all right, Mel.
Yeah, I think that Sam Darnold will be back. He's guaranteed almost $19 million next year. Now, was he going to be the starter? That remains to be seen. If Cam comes back, I mean, I believe that, when you talk about if Cam comes back, I believe he's better than Sam Darnold. I believe he's better than was it PJ Walker or whoever the other guy was, and
Right.
and whoever else they have on that roster. Cam is a much better quarterback than any of those individuals. So if Cam, and you got to remember, Cam, when he came out, I mean, he set a rookie record for passing yards on a first start. In his first start, I think he had 422 yards or something like that in his very first game. Cam can throw the football. He's just not a big guy that can run the football. I mean, I think they got to utilize Cam Newton's skill set. Cam can throw the football, and he's just a great athlete. And so he can move around in the pocket, run when necessary. I don't think you should have a whole bunch of design runs for Cam and just, use him like that. He's not Lamar Jackson. He can throw the ball better than Lamar Jackson. He's not as elusive as Lamar Jackson. He's bigger than Lamar Jackson, obviously, but he's taken a lot of hits over the course of time, and those things have caught up to Cam. But Cam can throw the football. So if I think they allow Cam to throw the football, I think he can flourish in the offense, having an off season in the offense, going to training camp, really having an understanding of the playbook. And if Cam really takes this opportunity seriously and looks around at what he could do and how much longer he could play, you look at the Aaron Rodgers, you look at Drew Brees, you look at Tom Brady. Those are quite a few more checks that he can collect if he can just really just discipline himself and just hunker down for the next, let's say, 6 to 8 years. I think he'll be what is Cam, 32, 33 right now? And he's still got a lot of earning years left in the NFL at that position. That's when guys are at their prime, and they'll allow you to stay around to your late 30s, early 40s at that position and make good money. So if he just really takes advantage of this opportunity, this could be a great situation for Cam Newton.
Well,
And he
the-
could be the quarterback of the future, because I don't know who's coming out in the draft this year. There's not a whole lot of people that they're talking about coming out in the draft.
Right.
And that's a crapshoot. I mean, you look at the Jets. I mean, they, look where they, they had this guy that I think they moved up. Did they move up to get this guy? Or they got a guy from
Zach Wilson.
yeah, and then then you got this guy that's been a journeyman, and he's gone out there and he's performed very, very well, even though they're going to start Joe Flacco this week, which I don't understand why. Maybe the other guy's hurt. I don't know. But I think Cam can be he can be the answer, the short term and medium to long term answer for the Panthers. I mean, you got to understand, this guy was the MVP of this league back in 2015, I think it was, when he took him to the Super Bowl.
Right.
There's not many guys that can say that. Not many guys have that on their resume.
Well, the key with Cam Newton, all he has to do is stay healthy and not absorb as many hits. And if he puts up some halfway decent numbers, I could definitely see a 1, 2, 3 year situation there. All right. The final thing we're going to talk about, obviously, is tonight's Thursday night game. You have the Atlanta Falcons hosting the New England Patriots. So you know what, Greg, I'm going to let you lead off with this one, even though it's in Mel's neck of the woods. Mac Jones is on a big stage in Georgia. And, when we talk about the guys that were drafted ahead of him, we're talking about Trey Lance with the 49ers, Trevor Lawrence with the Jacksonville Jaguars, as you were alluding to, Zach Wilson, Mel with the New York Jets, and Justin Fields. Just so happens the Jets had the number 2 pick in the draft to get him, so they didn't have to move up. But you have a situation where you've got Mac Jones, who incidentally is being coached by Bill Belichick, comes from Nick Saban, and Josh McDaniels seems to work well with quarterbacks. So, Greg, our final topic of the night. Okay, what are we looking like on the Mac Jones? Is he the best of this group, considering he slid down to 15?
Well, he definitely is the best of the group this year. Will he be long-term? Probably not. Trevor Lawrence, probably long-term going to be the best, but he's been very impressive. Patriots have not asked him to do a lot of heavy lifting, though. I think he only threw 19 passes last week. They have the good defense. They have the good running game. 2 things that make a quarterback a lot better. But he was known for his leadership and for his accuracy in college, and he's showing that so far in the pros. So I am optimistic. I'm bullish on his future. I'm still not sure what to make of the Patriots this year, though. Yeah, they're 6-4, and they've won 4 in a row, 3 in a row. But 2 of their wins against the Jets. One was against Carolina without McCaffrey, and one was against the Texans. So I'd like to see him beat one of the big boys, and we'll see. Tonight, I think tonight could be an interesting game only because it's in Atlanta, and Matt Ryan. I'm not a huge fan of Matt Ryan because it seems like he has 4 touchdown pass games followed up by a game with 1 touchdown pass and 3 interceptions a lot. So, and he doesn't have Ridley there either. So interesting game tonight. I'm expecting it to be close. And as a Dolphin fan, I'm rooting for the Falcons.
All right, Mel, it's in your backyard, Atlanta, Georgia. So we got to let the Georgia boy talk about what's going to happen in a place that used to be located next to the Georgia Dome.
Yeah, well, Mac Jones had the benefit of falling in the draft. And generally, when you fall in the draft, you're going to fall to a better team. The quarterbacks that get drafted, first pick, second pick, there's a reason why those teams are picking that high. They didn't do that well the previous year. So the situation has a lot to do with it, and system has a lot to do with how well quarterbacks perform in the league. And he went to the right situation, and he's in the right system that fits him. Basically he's kind of like Tom Brady 2.0. I'm not saying he's Tom Brady or anything like that, but he's not the fastest guy, he's not the strongest guy. He's his measurables, they're not going to wow you, but all he does is win games, and he doesn't make mistakes. And that's what Bill Belichick is looking for. So he fell to the right situation and the right system. As far as tonight's game is concerned, they've been playing well as of late. The Falcons they're coming off an embarrassing loss to the Cowboys this past weekend. They have some guys out. They can't get to the quarterback. I mean, Mac Jones, his passer rating when he's not facing any pressure, I think it's extremely high. When he does have some pressure, he's middle of the pack. but the Falcons can't get any pressure on the quarterback. That's one thing that they have not been able to do. And if they're not able to get pressure on the quarterback tonight, I don't see any reason why the Patriots wouldn't win this ball game. The Falcons have some injuries. I think they have a lot of key players that are not playing today. They just kind of, they're just kind of learning Arthur Smith's system, but unfortunately, defensively, they just have so many deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball, particularly not being able to rush the passer, that I don't see them winning this game today. I see the Patriots winning.
All right, Mr. Patriot, Steve, I have to let you take a rip at this, and then I'll give some final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at the quarterbacks that were drafted, I wrote back during the draft time that I thought Trevor Lawrence was far and away the most talented, but I thought Mac Jones was the most pro-ready because he had played, under Nick Saban at Alabama, played in a lot of big games. And, I thought he was going to the right situation because he's the type of quarterback that the Patriots like. He processes things quickly. He gets the ball out. He makes quick decisions. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And if he does, he learns from them. So I think he was in a great position. I think the reason they've been winning the last 4 games, they've been running the ball for an average of 156 yards a game the last 4 games. And tonight, as Mel was saying, the Atlanta defense is kind of bottom third of the league against the run. I think they're 21st or 22nd against the run. And, the Patriots have the rookie Stevenson. Damian Harris is back tonight. I think that you're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets, especially on a short week. You're on the road. What better way to control the tempo is try to run the football. And as he mentioned, they don't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And, Jones only completed 19 passes last week, but he had 3 touchdowns. So, but he only threw 23, so he didn't. Not many of them hit the ground. I think tonight it's. These Thursday night games are a crapshoot. We've seen Matt Ryan get hot. I think this one is going to be close, but I think if New England can run the football like they have been, I think they pull this one out by 10.
The only thing I'll say about the subject is this. Okay, of these 5 quarterbacks, I do believe that Mac Jones will be the only one that will win a Super Bowl. Okay, I'm making a prediction right now. I believe he's the only one of this group that will win a Super Bowl. Trey Lance will be okay. I think he'll have a good career, providing he stays healthy. Trevor Lawrence will get better as long as Urban Meyer stays around and he gets coached up a little. I do see potential there in Jacksonville. Zach Wilson, unfortunately, will get wrecked with the New York Jets. Sad to say it, but we've been on the Jets pretty hard, and he's going to get wrecked. And Justin Fields will provide some interesting, fun football over by Lake Michigan, but I don't think he's getting to the Super Bowl. So I think of all these 5, I do believe that Mac Jones, like you guys have alluded to, fell to the right situation, and he's the only one of these 5 I do believe will win a Super Bowl. With that said, okay, my hat of the night is the University of South Florida. I got to promote the Bulls once in a while. I'm a Bull, and I'll always be a Bull, okay, no matter what you think I say on this show whether there's a Bull connected to it, well, I'll leave that to another day. But, we've certainly had a lot of fun talking football tonight, as we do. I love it. My crew, they're outstanding. They all bring something to what we've got. So with that said, Craig, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
Well, they can always read my articles on southfloridatribune.com. And you can find me on Twitter at gfuchs at Gregory Fuchs.
Mel?
Yeah, also all the social media sites at Mel Farr Jr., whether that's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. And you can find out what we're doing here in Georgia and also up in Michigan. For the young kids up there, you can find that information out at melfar.org.
And finally, you, Steve?
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. I write for PatsFans.com. I also am a senior editor for a military site called SoftRep.com. So I'm always out there, and you can always find me on social media.
Beautiful. As far as we're concerned, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Tribune South. That's at Tribune South. You can also don't hesitate to subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, because these broadcasts are simulcast, both video as well as audio. So please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Some of our marketplace places that you can hear the audio will consist of iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So there's a lot of them out there, too many to mention. These are some of the main ones. If you want to email us, don't hesitate to do so at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. The shows can also be found on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. I'll tell you, my other half, Candy Ebling, does an unbelievable job, not only putting the website together, but making sure the broadcasts get up there as well. So kudos to Candy, kudos to you guys. I'm no good without an outstanding crew, and I appreciate every last one of you. So meanwhile, we're going to end it in a moment here. So any closing thoughts?
I want to amend my not rooting for the Patriots tonight, because I have Hunter Henry and Stevenson on my fantasy team. So I hope the Patriots score a lot of points, but lose by 1.
Mel? Anything else? Mel?
No, nothing else.
Steve?
No, I'm good. Let's watch some football.
All right, well, that puts a wrap on this edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City Madmouth. Thanking you for joining us tonight, and we will catch you the next time. Take care, everybody. Be safe from COVID-19, and let's take this virus seriously. It's still out there, and I have a feeling it's not going away anytime soon. So please be safe, everybody. We'll catch you the next time. Have a good night.
Good night, guys.
Good night.